This week on the GameCritics.com podcast, reviews versus criticism and why the difference is critical to every one of us. Then Roger Moore says games can't make us cry. No, not that Roger Moore, but we will debate his claim. Hopefully our arguments won't bring you to tears. All that plus impressions of Saints Row 2 and Cubello. It's the premiere episode of the GameCritics.com podcast, and it starts right now. It is the GameCritics.com podcast for the week of October 19th, 2008. My name is Tim Spaeth. I'm your host and moderator. I'm joined on this, our very first podcast, by the founder and editors of GameCritics.com, three strapping young men, and I will let them introduce themselves to you right now. Gentlemen, if you would please.
Hi, this is Chi-Kong Liu, owner of GameCritics.com.
This is Brad Galloway, senior editor and critic.
This is Mike Bracken, one of the staff reviewers.
Gentlemen, let me ask you this before we get started. How does it feel to be internet celebrities? Because right now, this is it. Popularity explosion. I wouldn't be surprised if by next weekend you're not signing autographs in malls or cutting ribbons off of new Bed Bath & Beyonds. Tell me, how does it feel? Does it feel good?
I think that's a little premature, too.
No, I think he's right. I have a big pair of scissors that I can take to those openings. I got one on sale, so I'm ready.
I guess I'll have to go to GameStop and I'll have to wear a T-shirt, that says I'm Chi-Kong Liu for people to recognize me, right?
I would like one of those T-shirts as well. Well, anyway, this is the first episode. It's unprecedented. Let's talk a little bit about what the format is going to be. Every week, several writers from your website, GameCritics.com, you'll be released from whatever bunker you're kept in when you're not writing or podcasting. You'll join me here on the air, and each guest from GameCritics will bring one topic to the table, whether that is a discussion of a particular game, might be commenting on news, some recent controversy in the industry, it might be a more philosophical discussion, whatever it is, the sky's the limit. Internally, we've kind of been calling it a 60 minutes approach, and to that effect, I do have Andy Rooney locked up in the garage if we want to bring him in at the end. But
keep him there.
I should keep him there.
Yeah, don't open that door.
Don't open him up. He's well fed, so he'll keep. But so to that effect, we talked about the topics in the introduction, but a little bit later, Chi, you're going to talk about criticism and community and its relevance to our lives, which I think will tie nicely into the website's new mission statement. I presume, Chi, that will be good for both the longtime reader of the website and the millions of new fans that the podcast will bring in.
Oh, absolutely.
And then a little bit later, Mike, you recently put a blog post on the website. Yet another film critic has declared that games are devoid of emotional content, that they'll never make us cry or feel anything whatsoever. But you're going to set the record straight for us?
I shall endeavor to do that.
Amen, brother.
But before we get to anything, or any of that, in our first segment, Brad, you've actually been playing some games, and you're going to bring us some insight into what this week?
Yes, absolutely. Games are what I usually do, and no different this week. On the table is Saints Row 2. I was a really big fan of the first Saints Row. For a couple of reasons. I think one reason was that it's just a really good game in the style of Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, meaning that it's a real open world, kind of go anywhere, do anything. There's lots of different content, lots of different activities that you can do. So I'm really into that style, and I think that Saints Row did it really well. The first Saints Row did. And the other reason that I really liked Saints Row, the first one, was because I had played it immediately after playing Grand Theft Auto 4, and I was horribly disappointed at Grand Theft Auto 4. I know that game just gets, scores of accolades. It's got, the highest Metacritic ranking of like all time or whatnot. But to me, it was a really, really boring game, and I felt like Rockstar just got away from what made the series good in the first place. So, being such a big fan of the first game, I, of course, was very excited to get hands on Saints Row 2, and I've got to say, I'm pretty disappointed. I only buy a couple games new a year, because to me, $60 is a lot of money. And I liked the first one so much, I felt like it was going to be a really worthwhile investment. And at this point, I'm kind of wishing I had held off. It's kind of funny because the first Saints Row came out about 2 years ago. And so at the time, it was pretty rough. The graphics were pretty basic. There were a few well-known bugs. But, I forgave all that because it was such a good time. It was so over-the-top and outrageous. It was hard not to like it. And it was hard to take serious, too, which I kind of appreciated because I don't really want to be a gangster. I don't really want to pimp my hose. I don't really want to, do drive-bys and feel good about it. I mean, it's kind of absurd when you think about it. So that their over-the-top nature really jibed with what I liked about it. So in those 2 years, the developers, Volition, have basically done nothing to improve the game whatsoever. In fact, I would even say that Saints Row 2 is more buggy and more technically deficient than the first game. Within the first couple hours of play, I hit a number of bugs, a couple of them game-stopping, which was really, really disappointing. The graphics are pretty much identical to the first games, and just overall, it feels really lackluster. It feels like they did the exact same game again, and just added a few little things, like there's helicopters this time, or there's, a few different side missions that you can do. But effectively, if you had the two games running side by side, I really doubt you'd be able to tell which one was which. One other thing that I really have a problem with in Saints Row 2 was that, like I said, it takes itself a little bit more seriously. And one of your lieutenants, like you rise to become like the kingpin of the city. And I'm not done with the game yet, but I'm at least halfway through. And one of your lieutenants is a chronic drug user. Now, I know it's a really, really arbitrary line to draw, but to me, in the first Saints Row, I was ferrying hookers back and forth. I was shooting my rival gang members. I was taking over the city and doing all kinds of like really socially inappropriate things. But drugs didn't play a big part of it. And personally, just for me speaking here, I'm really anti-drug. And so I know that people out there are going to be like, what are you talking about? You're going to kill gangbangers and you're going to do this and that and you're going to whore it up, but drugs is not okay? Well, yeah, drugs is not okay. So that's the line I'm drawing, and if people have a problem with that, that's fine. In Saints Row, well, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, are they using real drugs or are they using fake video game drugs?
They do mention marijuana several times, so it's like a real drug. And then later on in the game, they talk about Loa dust because one of the rival gangs is like a voodoo kind of gang, and so I guess that ties in with their voodoo motif. So, but there are definitely real drugs checked. So I mean, it's a real thing that you can see. And I'm really not okay with my gang kind of being so into drugs. Like a lot of the cutscenes show, like not only my character, but like the other characters kind of getting high. And a large part of the game is trying to produce drugs. And so, like I said, it's arbitrary, but for me, I'm not really into that. And I wish it was more of a side activity so I could maybe choose not to do it and do some of the other things that I find more enjoyable. So I'm a little bit disappointed, and I think it's, I'm not going to say that it's socially irresponsible because pretty much the entire game is socially irresponsible. But for me, it just kind of crossed that line, and I was just kind of not okay with that. So that's where I'm at with that.
I always find it funny that that this genre of game is being called sandbox, and yet at the same time the storylines are always so defined. Which it cracks me up. The way Grand Theft Auto was structured. It's you can't really make choices really when it really comes down to what you decide you want to do. I mean, yeah, you can do like little side missions, but it seems like Saints Row 2 is pushing along in that same direction. Is that true?
Yeah, that's very true. I would agree with that. I wouldn't really call it a sandbox. I think that was kind of a stopgap title that worked for a while, but I think maybe calling it open world is maybe more accurate because you don't, like you said, you don't really get to make any of those choices, but you can go wherever you want to do, and you can kind of, make really high-level choices, but you can't decide, like, the outcome of the game, or you can't, choose to completely skip one part of the activities and such. So, I guess it's a limit of game design right now. I'd like to see people make more advances in that. But, this is the style of game we have now. And it's definitely... It's almost like Saints Row 2 is more like San Andreas Part 3, with the first Saints Row being Part 2. It's pretty much a carbon copy of the game. But since I love San Andreas so much, I think it's kind of okay that they copy from the best. But, I don't know. I think I'm kind of getting to the point where I'd like to see a little bit more of an improvement. And I'm especially disappointed with the technical side. For a game to be released at $60, to me, it's kind of unacceptable the shape that it's in right now. So that's what I got to say about Saints Row 2.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the sandbox versus open world and GTA 4. I actually finished GTA 4. I spent about 40 hours in there, and it was a pretty astounding technical achievement. But exactly as you said, you had the main character, and I don't remember his name now. Was it Nico?
Nico,
yes,
yeah.
Nico Bellic.
Nico Bellic, and he was filled with remorse over his former life, and he hated killing, and he just wanted to get away from it and enjoy the American experience. And of course, when he got here, it was very different than what he was expecting it to be. But he didn't want to kill anymore, and yet every single mission had him killing somewhere between 20 and 30 people, showing absolutely at a minimum, exactly, and showing no remorse over it whatsoever. And like you said, I think GTA 4 took itself too seriously. I'm more of a San Andreas fan, and I liked strapping on the jetpack and the sniper rifle and landing on the roof of the casino and picking people off at random. Saints Row 2, does it despite the technical issues, is there wacky fun like that to be had? If I just wanted to goof around as a rental, would it even be worth it?
I think it would be worth it. I mean, all the gripes that I had, I still think it's a better game than Grand Theft Auto 4, just because 4, just like you said, it took itself very seriously, and the story didn't jibe. A lot of things didn't make conceptual sense, and I think that technically it was kind of okay. Like, I don't think it was as great as people give it credit for. But Saints Row 2 does have a lot of really bizarre, really funny things, but actually I do think that the first Saints Row was even more so. It was even more, like, over the top. It was even more, like, ridiculous. It was so ridiculous, like, you couldn't help but laugh at how ridiculous it was. And Saints Row 2, I think, is a little bit more sedate, although there are actually more activities to do. I mean, a good rental, and if you like the San Andreas style of game, you will very much get into Saints Row 2. But between Saints Row 1 and 2, I think 2 is a step down from 1.
You know what I find really funny about what you're saying is that you're saying that the original was even more ridiculous, and you want this one to be more ridiculous, as well as Tim was saying that GTA 4 was too serious. But isn't the GTA series like the pinnacle of mature gaming? Like All right, who's laughing there? Go ahead.
That's me, man. I'm laughing. This is Brad.
I mean, it's clear, like, you don't think that the attention that it got for being mature is deserved or even appropriate, rather.
No, I felt it was a joke. I literally could not believe how many people were holding up as an example of, like, really mature, sophisticated storytelling. It was like PR all the way. I mean, I can think of so many games that tell stories that are so much better than Grand Theft Auto 4.
When they were calling Grand Theft Auto 4 the Godfather or the Godfather Part 2 of gaming, and I spent maybe an hour, and just, you have to laugh that off. It was absurd. It's absurd to make that kind of comment.
I'm the guy who will have to play the devil's advocate here then, because Grand Theft Auto 4 is the only Grand Theft Auto game I've actually completed the entire game of, and I had a great time with it. As far as talking about Nico's character and wanting to get out of killing and having to kill in every mission, I have a hard time faulting the game for that, because we've seen samurai movies, westerns, and gangster movies for 50 years now that have characters who want to do the exact same thing in those particular films that are still forced to kill throughout the entire film anyway, and we don't necessarily downgrade those experiences for that same reason. So I don't really know why we would hold the video game to a different standard. I wouldn't say that it's great writing particularly, but it certainly is more mature than any of the GTA games that came before it, though, I think.
I'm kind of in Mike's corner there as well, in that, yeah, I wrote a pretty scathing review of GTA 3 at the time, and I said it wasn't serious enough, in that it was a very PG version of the mobster, iconography and all that other stuff. So, I kind of appreciated, them trying to take that even further, but I can't, I didn't play the game too far into it, so I can't really comment, whether it was ultimately successful or not. But it definitely was sort of more my version of what I wanted to see out of GTA. So it's kind of interesting that we all got a varying different expectations here.
And I think it's very telling that in our discussion of Saints Row 2, we're spending far more time talking about Grand Theft Auto 4, which maybe says something about either our interest level or the quality of the game. So, Brad, what else has been on your game plate recently?
Oh, I've got a couple of smaller things to mention. The first being Art Style Cubello for the Nintendo Wii. It's the second entry in Nintendo's Art Style series, which I assume is going to be a series. And it's a really, really good game. It's not the home run that Orbiant was, because I was completely in love with Orbiant. To me, that was a near religious experience. So it's hard to top that. But Cubello is really great. What it is all about, it's there's a mass of colored cubes that spin in the center of the screen, and pretty much that's all there is on screen. So it's very pared down, basic, really minimalist. And what you do is you have to match 4 cubes of the same color, but because these cubes are in 3D, they don't have to be like in a line or in a certain shape. As long as any of the sides are touching in any of the 3 dimensions, it'll count as a combo. So not only do you have to match those and use 3D at the same time, but you also use the Wii to precision shoot the blocks. So it's like a combination of puzzle match game and precision shooter. And it works really well. I mean, it's a very, very interesting combination, and I think it's a really natural fit. Like, it doesn't really seem like it would work that well when you start talking about it, but once you play a few levels, it really is like a peanut butter chocolate kind of thing. The only problem with it is that sometimes it's really hard to finish the levels because the game, for some reason, doesn't detect when you eliminate one color from the board. So sometimes they're giving you blocks of a certain color that you've already got rid of. So it kind of forces you into making a combo when you're trying to clear the board. I guess you could maybe say that they did that on purpose, but there's been a number of times when I've just found it like nearly impossible to get a level to end because they just keep giving me more colors and I can't get it to stop. So I guess it could be an issue of my own gameplay skill, but I kind of feel like it's maybe a balance issue. But regardless, the game costs like $6, and the aesthetic and the philosophy behind it are pretty incredible. I really, really love that this game and Orbiant before it are on the Wii. To me, it gives the Wii so much more cred for WiiWare, and it's exactly the kind of thing that I love to see come to the download services. So, total recommendation. It's not perfect, but it's definitely something that people should pick up.
Funny behind-the-scenes story for me was that when I was putting together the layouts for your review, Brad, and I went to Nintendo's press site to get some screenshots to accompany the review, they literally had only like 2 tiny little thumbnails of the actual of the game. It was just like unheard of, and I had to enlarge that screenshot, and that's what you see on our site today. But it was just a bizarre thing where it's almost like they don't want you to even look at the game, it seems like.
No, that's true. When I was trying to find images of it myself, it was like nearly impossible. And it's bizarre because if I was Nintendo, I would be shouting from the rooftops that I've got this thing. I mean, not only is it pretty much one of the cheapest things you can download on any service, it's really, really good. Like, I would love for more developers to kind of get on board with this back-to-basics gameplay where it's really sophisticated, but it's elegant. It's really simple. It goes to show that you don't need all these heads-up displays and all these power-ups and all these other... I mean, if you just have a good formula, man, it works. It just, like, sings. And I can't believe that Nintendo's not hyping it more. I'm really disappointed.
Are the visuals at least mildly attractive, or...
They're pretty much abstract art. Like, Orbiant and Cubello both are very abstract. I can understand why people would take one look at that and go, I'm not playing that. Because it looks like colored cubes on a white background. It makes it's not really that attractive until you get into the mindset of what you're doing. But once you get into it, it really shows that you don't need all those graphics. I mean, to me, it's a perfect encapsulation of Nintendo's Wii philosophy, how they thought that gameplay is going to trump graphics. And I think that they've proven that to a certain degree. But this game and the one before it are like even more so.
Right, so I think it stands to reason that they're almost intentionally suppressing these screenshots so that people might, give the gameplay a chance, basically.
I guess. I mean, I suppose so. But, I mean, they've got videos running on the Nintendo channel, and watching the videos, you don't even know what they're even about. Like, it's so bizarre to watch those. And, I mean, if it wasn't so cheap, I don't think I would have even tried it, but I'm glad that I did, so... one more last thing to mention. One more small quick thing. On the PlayStation Network, they just released Linger in Shadows, which came out, I think, last week or the week before. It's not really a game. It's like an interactive piece of art. I guess the developers call it Demo Scene. I'm not really too familiar with that, but I guess there's a whole underground culture where people make these really cool technology demos that are kind of artistic, like they're really short movies, and that's all they really are. They're not really games. But this Linger in Shadows, it's like $3 on the PlayStation Network. It's about a 6-minute video, and what they've done is they've integrated the PlayStation's motion so that as you're watching the video, if you do certain motions, it'll like tweak things on the screen, and so you can kind of play with it a little bit. And it's really a head trip the first time that you play. Like, it's these really abstract images. There's like tentacles, and then it's dark, and then there's some light, and then there's a woman, and there's a dog that's flying, and you don't know why he's flying, and then there's like a statue, and it doesn't make any sense, but it's like intriguing. And the more that you mess with it, the more you can kind of deconstruct what's there. I mean, it's not anything that I would say, it's a must play, but if you're interested in the more artistic, experimental side of gaming, it's pretty interesting. I wouldn't mind seeing a few more things like it. And for $3, I mean, you can buy a latte at Starbucks for more than $3, or you can get this 6-minute video, which is really interesting to me. So, get both, or if you can only get one, go for Linger in Shadows. So.
Yeah, the lattes cost $6 out here in New York.
Oh, geez. Okay. Well, definitely go with Linger in Shadows, then. You'll get more value for your money.
Fantastic. Brad, thanks very much. Any other thoughts, questions, concerns, feelings, hopes?
I think that wraps it up for me, but yeah, it's been a good week. It's been a really good week.
Well, let's take a quick break. When we come back, criticism. And it's important to all of us. Well, the new tagline for GameCritics.com is Games, Culture, Criticism. Chi, why don't you talk a little bit about this new tagline, the new mission statement, maybe a new direction for the website?
Yeah, sure. Well, what happened was that, like, when we published our review of Halo 3 by Dan Weissenberger, we gave it a 7 out of 10, and that really set the internet ablaze with comments. And one thing that I found really interesting was how many complaints that we got about how that reviews are like basically we should be super objective and basically just run through the features and make it very clear whether this was worth their time and money or not. And that really rubbed me the wrong way, I guess, because that's really like not what I view criticism as a whole should be about. I mean, yeah, there's going to be that inherent demand from the reader of wanting to find out information, whether they want to spend their money, and we don't deny that that's a part of the process. But if you look at like movie reviews, I don't think any typical movie review, that the critic would ever say at the end, you should go see this movie. So as part of that, our old tagline was smart reviews for serious gamers, and as part of just wanting to reinvent ourselves a little bit, and get with the Web 2.0 times, it became apparent that just seemed very limiting to us, and the idea of a review was just not encompassing enough of what we wanted to do. So that's why we moved toward changing that to adding culture and criticism. So I think the immediate question is, well, what is criticism then, right? Like, what and how is that relevant to us? And to me, rather than sort of go to a whole textbook dictionary definition of it, I'll just talk a little bit more about why I think it's relevant to my life. And I think anytime you've gone to a movie, a really good movie, or you've read a really good book, or you've played a really good game, and when you're done, you just you just can't get enough of it, and or it challenged you in such a way that you had questions about it, and you want answers. You basically want to you want to share that experience with people, and you want to find out like what exactly did that mean. And I think that's where criticism comes in, and I think that's where critics try to be of help in that regard, is that we're trying to, put some of the experience into a context that makes sense for people looking for more information and for more questions. And I think that happens on two levels. I think it happens on a universal level as well as a personal level. And what do I mean by that? Sort of like when Dark Knight came out, the movie, right? And Heath Ledger died right before that. Well, that's a universal experience, obviously. We all saw that in the news, and we all had to contemplate exactly, well, how's that going to affect the movie, and is that going to make a difference in the way I view it? So that's definitely people are looking for a better understanding of that. And then I think the more personal experience is what it means to me specifically. For example, like in Metal Gear Solid 2: Sons of Liberty, at the end of the game, and I guess I'm not really spoiling anything for anyone at this point since it's a really old game. But when it ends in downtown Manhattan, in the Wall Street area, and it's by the Washington Memorial in Wall Street, it's just hard for me not to get emotionally attached to that. Being after 9/11. And yeah, 9/11 was something that happened to the country as a whole, but me specifically being from New York, it just has a whole different context, So I think there's value as well to us sharing these different personal experiences we have, and if you're just sort of open to it, that I think it'll enrich the overall experience as well. So basically, that's basically what I wanted to share about it. I mean. And I also wanted to hear other people's thoughts on what criticism or game criticism means to you as well.
Okay, I'll go first then. Everybody jumped in on that one there, Chi. I think you stunned us all with all that. To me, that's what I look for in game criticism, and that's initially what led me to Game Critics. What is it now, like 7 years ago, before I started writing here, I was a reader of the site. I'm looking for that type of, if I just wanted a product review, I can go to IGN or a number of other places that are going to tell me, give me a laundry list of whether games have good graphics, if the controls work, if the story's interesting. But, I like that there's another school of critical thought that actually looks at these experiences and tries to, quantify them as something more than just a consumer item. And for me, and that's not to be pretentious or anything like that, but, there are a lot of places that do the consumer type review. But if you want something a little deeper, and I think some of us do when it comes to things we love, it's good already. I don't need to read someone telling me it's good. I would like to read more critical thought about why it's good or why someone else didn't think it was good. And I think that's something that a lot of sites don't provide. And I would like to see more of it.
How did you sort of come to appreciate that level of thinking?
Well, I'm a film critic, so I have been for years, before I started writing about games, I was interested in cinema, and so I was reading, Pauline Kael, and I remember Siskel and Ebert when they first, started doing the show when it was back on like WQED, like on PBS.
Mm-hmm.
So, you saw those guys had found something which for them was film that they felt this passion about, and they were really into, and they wanted to talk about it, as a product, but they were less concerned about that and more concerned about it as a form of artistic expression, or how it was going to make an audience feel. And so that was where my interest came. And then when I had been playing video games as a little kid, that didn't exist. I remember playing video games when there weren't game magazines and there weren't game reviews and there weren't G4 and X-Play and all this stuff. So it's nice to see that games have come to a point where they're this popular, but at the same time, there's still room for people to do the, should I buy it or not type pieces. And then there are guys at the other side of the pendulum who do the more, let's look at this as something more than just a consumer product. So that's pretty much where my interest came from.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Mike. I think something I'd like to add to that is I think a big part of this whole puzzle is how long someone has been playing games. I noticed that and just kind of anecdotally talking with people who are new to games, they don't really look at it as anything more than something fun to do on a Friday night with pizza and their buddies over. So those are the guys who like maybe got an Xbox 360 like last year for the first time, or they started playing at the tail end of the PS2 era or something like that. And, they're kind of like, I kind of look at those people as the newcomers, and they're kind of like at the, I want a summer blockbuster kind of mindset. But I think that when you talk to people who have been in games for a long time like us, I mean, I think we were all kind of there basically at the start of when games really took off. I mean, I think we've all probably been playing for 20 plus years easily, right? I mean,
right.
Yeah.
When you've been doing something for that long, your taste and your appreciation and what you want from this medium kind of grows. And as you build up that repertoire of games that you've played and the different experiences you've had, it really gives you the ability to kind of to look deeper and to look for more. I mean, when films first started coming out, I mean, I think people didn't see them as art whatsoever. And now I think you'd be really hard pressed to find someone who would say that films aren't art. Although that's not to say that, Beverly Hills Chihuahua is a piece of art. I mean, debatably it is. But, there's some films that are very obviously out there just to make a buck. And, that's okay. I mean, that's one potential outcome of the medium. But there are films also that are totally out there to make you feel or to make you think or to, there's something the director wants to tell you. And I think it's the exact same thing with games. And I think it's only now, after games being in full force for, 20-ish years or so, that people are even starting to begin to see them in that light. And so, if you're just new to it, you're not going to be able to say, well, this director of this game really brought this characterization home for me, or he really sent me on an adventure that really meant something to me. If you're new to it, you're just going to be like, well, this is fun. I like it a lot. And there's nothing wrong with that. I don't mean to sound like I'm talking down about it, because I'm not. I mean, games are fun, and they're supposed to be fun. But I think it's really ignorant and really doing the medium a disservice to kind of not acknowledge that there could be more, can be more, will be more, is more. So I think once people have been playing more, and once there are more people who have been playing, that'll just become naturally like the status quo. And I think we'll be much more open to things that kind of make us think and kind of make us view what we're doing as more than just sheer entertainment.
I mean, well, two things. First of all, you mentioned Beverly Hills Chihuahua. After this, I'm recording my Beverly Hills Chihuahua podcast, so we have to move along. But
sorry, Tim, I didn't mean to knock you out.
It hurt. It cut me deep. But you're absolutely right. It is all perspective. We all remember our Atari 2600s when you had combat, and that's all the game was two tanks shooting each other, and there was no story, there was no context except what we imagined in our minds. And then as time goes on, we see the incorporation of a story. We have Super Mario Brothers, let's rescue the princess, and then that evolves into Ocarina of Time, where we're rescuing the princess, but there's this vast mythology in the land, and it was certainly we have an advantage over the folks who are new to this. And let me ask you this, Chi, because from my perspective, the vast majority of game-related websites and media, it's just a wasteland. It's people talking about the graphics are wicked awesome and the sound is super cool, and there is such a small percentage. I can probably count on three fingers the number of websites that are attempting to do what you are doing with Game Critics. Is it possible that there's not a huge audience for this, or how can we build an audience for this type of content? How do we bring them to the site and make them aware that Game Critics is even out there?
Well, that's a really complex question, but I think a lot of it has to start with the game developers themselves. I mean, I sort of alluded to that earlier, where it starts with the experience, and I think if game developers started making experiences that were more, mentally challenging, that that in turn would have the gamers seek out that kind of information, so and it goes both ways. Gamers have to be receptive to it as well. They have to stop thinking of games as just purely entertainment, and a diversion.
We talk about building a community. Looking at the Game Critics website right now, there's a large ad you're accepting. I won't call it an ad, but there's a post on the front page inviting people to almost submit their own reviews to the website to participate.
As part of the new initiative that we have right now, I mean, we started to recognize that, in order for this audience to grow, it's going to take more than just like 10 guys to be able to do this, and it's going to take a lot more effort. And, we want to be a community of people, and I think there's more of us out there. That's the thing, I think there's more of us out there, and there needs to be a place for us to be able to congregate, and that's what we're hoping to do with GameCritics.com now.
And I think it says something that and people should know, this is not your primary job. This is not a source of income for you. This is a labor of love, a passion that has been out there for nearly a decade, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just strange. I mean, the whole process of how I got here. I mean, I come from a art and design background, and it and I was taking a lot of art history classes, a lot of art theory classes, and I was also a film lover like Mike as well, and heavily into film criticism, and I just wanted to see more of that applied to games, and I wanted to see where that would take us,
Yeah, I'd like to add to that also. I mean, I think that everything she's saying is totally right on, and I think that once people do start to recognize that games can be more, it's going to help us make some headway, and I think a large part of it is just, it almost sounds like too simple to say this, but I almost think it's like the age. As the age of the average gamer creeps up, I think people are kind of more and more ready to look for more things and be open to actual criticism, where you actually kind of apply it after you've played the game. Like, you don't really come to Game Critics to see, oh, the new game's out, should I buy this? I got to buy something this Friday. What do they say? It's more like, okay, we've all played the game. We've all had time to digest it. We've really picked it apart. What do we think happened there? Was it really successful? How did it relate to other games? How did it relate to me? Did it have cultural commentary? It's almost like they're kind of like after-the-fact reviews, or like true reviews, where you don't look to them just to see if it's a green light to drop your $60 on it. You really want to see, what was the game really all about? So I think that's something that we bring that's a little bit different than the norm.
And just to be a little more specific about that, just looking at Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty, I mean, there's just a heck of a lot of content in there, and for anyone to ignore the subtext is just missing out on a whole lot there. I mean, Hideo Kojima pretty much seems to me like he predicted 9/11 in a lot of ways, and that's crazy right there, to be able to digest that,
Yeah, but Raiden sucked.
So speaks the masses.
Yes. Well, that's fantastic. Anything you wanted to add to the conversation before we take a break and move to our next segment?
No, I think actually the next segment is a nice segue into expanding some of the things that we just talked about, actually.
Absolutely. So when we come back, Mike is going to answer the question, can or should games make us cry? More after this. And we're back for our final segment on this, the premiere episode of the GameCritics.com podcast. Mike, I'll make this introduction short and sweet. Can games make us cry?
Well, if you listen to film critic Roger Moore from the Orlando Sentinel, the answer is a resounding no. Roger wrote a scathing review of the new Max Payne movie this week, which I didn't have a problem with him writing a scathing review of it. My own review of it was pretty scathing as well. It's not a good movie. But he chose as his Rotten Tomatoes blurb the little bit of text you get to show to get people interested in clicking to go to your review from the site, and I quote, "As good as a couple of its action beats are, Max still suffers from the heartlessness that makes games emotionally inferior to movies. Nobody ever shed a tear over a video game character's death." Now, Roger has been a film critic, I don't know how long, but this is not the first time where he's courted controversy. 2 years ago, when Clerks 2 came out, he said something about Kevin Smith fans, and Kevin Smith saw it, and there was a big brouhaha over that, and I'm sure he loves the attention. So this, to me, reads like something he probably wrote and put up there because he knew it would get a bunch of comments. And of course, as you can imagine, at Rotten Tomatoes, there are like 75 comments up telling Roger Moore what an idiot he is and how he knows nothing about games, and citing examples of games that have made us cry. I don't recall ever actually crying over a video game. That being said, there have been numerous games where things have happened that have been very emotionally affecting. to the point of, having a resonance with you after the game ends. I know the first thing everybody says is Final Fantasy VII. And again, I'm not going to worry about spoilers, because if you haven't played Final Fantasy VII by now, you're just way behind the times. But Aeris's death in that particular game is an example everybody points to. And what's been interesting about the whole discussion, or the browbeating of Roger Moore, is there's been some little side arguments in the comments section at Rotten Tomatoes about whether, okay, so you cried at Final Fantasy VII, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's good writing or a good game. I agree. I think Final Fantasy VII is a melodramatic game which has a mess of a plot that even now, what's it been, 10, 15 years later, I still don't understand half of the plot of Final Fantasy VII. But that doesn't mean that the game doesn't have some kind of emotional impact or connection with the people who play it. And to make such a bold comment is just wrong to me, because it's so clear that Roger Moore doesn't play games. If you had only played Pac-Man or Space Invaders, or as we were talking about last segment, Combat, then yeah, you could say, well, nobody's ever going to cry over the dead tank in Combat or anything like that. But games have come so far, and the narratives have evolved so much over the past 2 or 3 decades that, yeah, we have reached the point where games can elicit emotional responses from the people who play them. And I just was kind of taken aback that someone would be so glib in dismissing an entire medium like that. Someone who is supposed to be a critic and who works in a field that film was once dismissed as not art as well. And just thought I wanted to bring that up and see what everybody thought about it, and maybe have a little discussion about the games that have made you cry or have an emotional reaction to them, because I have a list.
Well, for him to say that, for him to actually write that, it's obviously asinine to all of us. I'm assuming, but at the same time, I will say that I think that a lot of developers haven't figured out how to put emotional context into their games. And to go back to the Final Fantasy VII example, the problem with Aeris is that the vast majority of the time you spend with her is in a combat menu. She's not a character. Most of the time she's a gameplay tool. So when she died, I thought, well, okay, this is kind of clever, because back then RPG characters never really died permanently. So, but I wasn't thinking, oh God, I'm going to miss her and I feel so bad for Cloud. I was thinking, well, gosh, how am I going to heal my party now without her there? So
no, that's a very good point. I personally, like I said, I think Final Fantasy VII is the example everyone points to, but I don't think it's particularly the best example, because, as you say, she was someone you spent a lot of time with in the battle menu. You don't really know her as a character so much, and I think it resonates with people more because, again, it was the first time that I can remember anyway, that a main character in an RPG died and was actually dead. Wasn't coming back later in the story. There wasn't some secret trick to bring her back. But then I think there are a lot of other games over the years where things happen that do have like more of an emotional impact, and some of them are more emotional than things I've seen in a lot of films. So I just think the whole argument, the whole dismissal, is just so glib and clueless, and gets back to that whole thing about the age thing, that sometime at some point we're going to reach an age where gamers get old enough where we control things, and then people will understand that some of this stuff has more value than just being, shooting things on a screen. But again, Final Fantasy VII is a flawed example. I agree.
What are some of your other examples that you have on your list?
The one that actually got me the most is one that probably not a lot of people experienced. Lost Odyssey on the 360, it's an RPG, has a scene where 2 kids who end up eventually joining your party their mother dies and they have to do this funeral, and they incorporate doing the ceremony for the funeral into the gameplay. You actually have to, there's a big ceremony and you have to gather the stuff up for the ceremony, and then during the ceremony you have to perform certain button presses to burn these ropes to send the funeral ship off to sea and everything. And it's incredibly touching. I mean, first off, it's two little kids who have lost their mother, and the way it's actually incorporated into the gameplay is just, I don't know how you could play through this segment or watch it and not feel something about it. So that's my Top Gun as far as the argument goes. But some other stuff, I really think Klonoa has an ending that is which is surprising, very, very sad, and very, definitely would have an effect on anybody who has a heart.
This is a furry platformer, right?
Yeah, which is so odd. Right? I know Brad, I think, feels the same way.
Oh, yeah. It was very powerful. The ending. I literally almost cried. I was like,
yeah.
If it had gone on for maybe 3 more seconds, I would have shed a tear. It's very powerful. And I don't mean that sarcastically.
No.
Like she said, it's a furry, dog-like character who's got a little blue ball for a friend. You hop on things. It's a platformer. And at the end, man, they just gut punch you with what happens at the end, and it's so bizarre and unexpected, and it's so poignant and sad. I was really touched by Klonoa. Door to Phantomile, the first one.
I mean, was this something like Spaulding, the ball in Castaway? I mean, give us some context here. What are you guys talking about? Because I never played the game.
Oh, go ahead, Brad.
Over the course of the game, it's kind of a partnership, and it's downplayed. It's not anything really significant. Like I said, I mean, you're a dog character, you jump, and you hit monsters and stuff like that. But over the course of the game, they have a little bit of dialogue, not a ton, but a little bit. But when you get to the end, just after spending so much time with Klonoa, and his friend's name is Hugh Pal. That's how powerful it was. I can remember what his friend's name was, and it's been 15 years since I played that game. Totally remember it like it was yesterday. But you get to the end, and it turns out that that Klonoa or Hugh Power, one of them or whatever, they don't belong in the same dimension because they're from different spaces. And so what happens is when you get to the end of the adventure, they have to part ways. And so you spent the entire game being friends with this guy or this thing, and then at the end, neither one of them wants to part, and they start crying because they're being ripped away by the forces of the universe. And there's no way to keep them together. And it's just that parting and the emotion that they both show in that final cutscene is just really it's really impactful. It really hit me. And I'm like, man, this is a cartoony, silly platformy game, and it's almost making me cry because it's so sad at the end. So I hope I didn't ruin that for anybody, but definitely go out and play it because I think it's worth it.
And the other game that I point out sometimes, and it's funny too because this is another game that I give a lot of grief to for its myriad problems in terms of storytelling. But Final Fantasy X is, aside from the goofy laughing scene that everybody rags on, when you get to the end of that game, it's actually really gut-wrenching. I mean, the way that game ends is not the way you would expect a Final Fantasy game to end, and the way things are left unresolved. It's really pretty powerful stuff. And again, it may not be high art, it may not be the greatest cinema out there or something like that, but to say that no one ever gets attached to these characters or comes to feel anything when they're gone is just not really looking at the medium in a way that's realistic. I mean, you spend 60 hours in some of these games with these characters, so I think it's inevitable that you're going to feel some kind of bond with them.
Oh, I totally agree, Mike. I totally second your nomination of Final Fantasy X also. That's one of my favorite games, and it's funny because the part that stands out the most to me from that game is not even the main storyline. It's a couple of the characters. One of them is called Waka, and I mean, he's got a stupid name, so you automatically think it's going to be stupid, but he's really anti-technology or whatnot in the game. And when he meets a character who's really a lover of technology, they clash, and they have these, it's almost like a religious, kind of Sunni Muslim, Christian Jew kind of thing, where they just have this kind of clash, and they don't think that they're going to be able to get along. And by the end of the game, you see each of the characters kind of growing and changing, and when they finally accept each other at the end, Like, it's a really fine piece of writing. It's a really good piece of character development. And it wasn't something that made me cry, but it definitely made me sit back and think, wow, it was really cool that over the span of this game where I'm clicking menus and buying items and killing monsters, that I really cared about how Waka felt about, the technology users. I mean, it seems so abstract and bizarre, but like Mike said, you spend enough time with these characters, and if they're written well enough, I mean, it's the same kind of emotional journey that you go on with any good film, except it lasts a lot longer, and you're way more involved in it because you actually play a role. And I think that's kind of the thing that really gets short shrift in these discussions, is that we're really having people engaged on a much different level than simply sitting back and watching something. I mean, you're doing it. You're going through, you're making decisions, you're fighting the monsters, you're going through all these tribulations with these characters. And if the writing is good enough, I mean, that together is a pretty powerful combination. Like, you feel like you've kind of been on the journey with them. I mean, that's how I feel anyway, so I definitely agree.
Is it...
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Sorry, my example actually is kind of following in lines of the whole doing aspect of it. And my example... First, well, let me preface that first by saying that I haven't cried yet either while playing a video game, at least not that I can recall. And when this came up, I thought really hard about it, and nothing came to mind. But the game that emotionally resonated with me the most is actually Shenmue. And the scene is the scene that stuck with me. It's very interesting because it's not like particularly dramatic or melodramatic, typically as it is with these games. It's the scene where Yo is his name Yo?
Ryo.
R-Y-O? Ryu?
Ryo.
Yeah.
Ryo, right. And it's the scene where I think he's climbing into a basement of the dojo, and he's uncovering stuff about his father.
Oh, yeah.
And
yeah.
I didn't even really expect it. It was just kind of like, I mean, I guess because you kind of like look up, you look up to this guy, he's your father, and you don't really know much about him, I think, and it's probably something we all can relate to with our own fathers, right? And he's sort of just, going through all his things, and he's just sort of uncovering little things about his father, and, as you sort of go through that, I really felt like, wow, I just, something emotionally changed with me about the way I felt about both of the characters, so that was my example there.
And I think that one of the other interesting things is he says that nobody can cry over these characters, and that's one thing, but I don't even think it has to be just about whether games make you cry or not. I think the whole range of emotions is open to debate there. And, I've seen games in the past few years that have had better stories and characters than films that I've seen. I've seen games that I've played through not because I cared about the gameplay, but because I wanted to see what happened next in the story. Something like Yakuza or BioShock or, the Metal Gear games. I mean, as good as those games were, especially like BioShock gameplay-wise, I was more concerned about just getting to the next story interlude. So, I just think that it's just very... I don't even know what the word I'm looking for is, but it's just so wrong-headed to just casually dismiss something that you clearly have no experience with.
Because I had two games I wanted to mention, and one of them was BioShock. And did you all finish BioShock?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Maybe possibly, and I'm not going to give the ending away, but there's a good ending and a bad ending, and the good ending is very sentimental, and I didn't come close to crying, but I think it's a very poignant ending. But as I reflected on it later, I kind of felt like the game cheated a little bit, because the entire game is the story is told from the first person perspective. And there was clearly this ending, this story point that they wanted to reach, but it was almost like the developers couldn't figure out how to get there and stay in that first-person perspective, so it falls back on a cutscene. And it's the only time in the game when there's a traditional video game cutscene. And I said, well, here's a game that tells this great story in this very unique way, and then it falls back on a film convention, like most games do, to finish the story out. And I thought, well, here's a game that's cheating, but we have this medium of games. What can games do differently to evoke emotion? So there was another game I thought of, and I spent about an hour trying to find the name of it, and I could not find the name, so I'm just going to describe it. and I was pointed to it actually by a forum post on Game Critics a couple years ago. It's very primitive graphically. It has, I would say, just about Atari 2600-ish graphics. The game lasts no more than 5 minutes, and your character is basically a little square that moves, basically walking from left to right across the screen. And it essentially, I don't want to give too much away, but it essentially represents this guy's life.
Yeah, you're talking about, it's called like a Passage. That's what it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it takes like I said, it's incredibly primitive, but once you realize what the game is about, and once you get to the end, it is profoundly moving. And to me, it sent a message that said, with games, we have a unique opportunity to tell a story in a way that no other medium can. And I just wonder why it is so difficult for developers to go that route instead of falling back on the cutscene. Because with that game, Passage, it was an experience that could not have been told that way in any other medium.
I agree with you, Tim. That when I played Passage the first time, I was blown away. I mean, the graphics are so crude, like you said. It does look Atari-ish. But it's so deep, and like a lot of the things can be really pulled apart, and it has such thought behind it. I really have total respect for that game, and I do think everybody out there should play it. I mean, you can download it for free, and like you said, it takes like 5 minutes tops to play. But, I think part of it is that just not everybody is a good storyteller. I think there's a lot of people out there who have a lot of technical capacity for making games that run really well, that act fast, that have a lot of action, which is great. I mean, I think we absolutely need those games. But at the same time, it's kind of the same way that like not every book is a blockbuster. Like anybody can write a book if they sit down and just keep typing. But you really have to kind of understand what the player's experience is. You have to understand what you are trying to say. And then you have to kind of marry that in a way so that your point gets across through the actions of someone else. I mean, I think that is kind of a challenge that has never really been upon the human race before. I mean, how often have we had to design something that is felt and experienced by someone else in a very active, participatory way? I mean, this is the first time that I can think of. I mean, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but in the history of artistic media, we've never really had that before. So I think we've made really good strides for how far along in the process we are. And I think as we mature and as the media matures, people will naturally develop this skill. Just like the first books were not very good to read, but as people kept writing and kept reading, like the writers today, I mean, some writers today are fantastic. I mean, they transport you to these other worlds, and they put yourselves in the heads of other characters. I think that same thing is going to happen with games. I think we're kind of still feeling our way in the dark a little bit. Like the lights haven't been turned on quite yet.
And again, I think that part of the thing there is that games are so tied to film at this point that there's a lot of times that people who write games are trying to emulate the same kind of writing that goes into a movie, and 3-act structure and stuff like that works in games, but there's nothing written that says games have to follow the kind of cinematic writing structure. And I think at some point somebody's going to come along and say, 3-act structure is nice for film and things of that nature, but maybe we could try doing it differently in games and take it in an entirely different direction.
Yeah, and I think Tim's example, as well as what you were just saying there, Mike, just speaks to how young the medium really is. It's a lot of I think a lot of the creators right now, are mostly programmers. And I think the classic example is like John Carmack, right? He's a wizard when it comes to this technology, but he really doesn't see himself as an artist. And, so they just do what they know how to do, which is create great technology, and at some point, and we're seeing this more and more now, you're seeing, some more of these designers take more of an auteur stance, like, Hideo Kojima and, and even Miyamoto in a less, obvious way, but it's slowly happening. It's gonna take time, obviously.
I will. I'll throw one more game in there. Call of Duty 4, the big moment in the middle. If you played through the single player, there's only one thing I could be talking about. That just kind of knocked me. That was just like shock and awe. What a great moment! Did you guys play it?
I got bored. I quit way before that part.
Okay,
so sorry. take your word
Can
for
you
it.
share can you share a little more of what you're talking about?
Essentially, the game, like, and I think this is Call of Duty 4 is the only Call of Duty game I've played, but you basically switch between a U.S. Marine and a British. I don't remember which branch of the military he's in, but there's an event that takes place roughly halfway through the American campaign, and you're going back and forth, and the assumption is you're going to play as these two characters throughout the game, and essentially in an unnamed Middle Eastern country, the entity in power sets off a nuclear weapon, destroying the city, and you, as you're escaping the city. So your helicopter crashes, and the scene wakes up where you are in complete control of the character, but you can't move beyond a crawl. So you're stuck in this helicopter that's crashed. You crawl out of the helicopter, and all around you are all of the characters that you've been interacting with throughout the game. But their bodies are in tatters, and they're suffering from burns, and you're clearly dying. Your vision is getting blurrier and blurrier as you're crawling out of the helicopter, and eventually you fall out of the helicopter, and you're able to look around, and you're seeing your fallen companions, and you just look to the left. And you don't have to look to the left, but if you happen to look to the left, you can see the mushroom cloud in the distance. And it's an unbelievably powerful moment, and your character dies, and that's the last thing he sees. And I thought, what an incredible gameplay convention to have your main character, who you have been, you never see him, but you've been him for the entire game, dies halfway through, and that's it. And it was just, to me, just this very powerful visual, just gorgeous and moving and kind of sad. And now that I've ruined it for you, you won't.
It's too bad it wasn't earlier in the game. I would have stuck around for that.
It won't. You can probably watch it on YouTube, but I don't think that's exactly what they intended.
Yeah, right.
But it's a great moment. It's something I would check out. But well, I think this podcast is going to be listened to by just about every creative entity in the industry. I have no doubt of that. We've thrown down the gauntlet. So that's our challenge to the developers. Move us, because I know it can be done. So that's where we're at. That's our last segment. Any final thoughts before I take care of some administrative activities here?
No, that was a great ending there, Tim.
I may just edit that Call of Duty part out. I think so. Anyway, we have a little contest. I don't know if it's so much of a contest as it is just a plea to the community. The GameCritics.com podcast is not the best title for a podcast. As I've said before, it's more of a description. So, Chi, I think you're setting up a special email address, podcast@GameCritics.com. So
Yep, that's ready to go. Mm-hmm.
So if anyone has any title suggestions for the podcast, we welcome your submissions. And
I think we had talked about the person who picks the name of the podcast will be invited to participate for one of our recordings, so they can be the first reader to come on board and chat with the critics.
And they too can drink from the cup of fame and celebrity that we enjoy on a daily basis.
Deeply.
And to that effect, we crave your feedback. We hope that you have some thoughts and opinions on what we've talked about, and suggestions, hopes, dreams, whatever. Send those all to podcast@GameCritics.com, and we do intend to read the best emails on the air in an upcoming episode. And don't forget, of course, to check out GameCritics.com. Sign up for the forums, join the community, join the discussion. And Chi, Brad, Mike, anything exciting happening on the website right now? There's always something exciting happening, but any hot reviews up, any great feature articles you wanted to pimp while we're here?
Well, this week we have the Spore review coming up from Tara Kirk. I know Brad has just put in his review of Yakuza 2, so that's also coming up. And we're also going to have our second reader review that we're going to publish on our homepage as well.
So you won't want to miss that. get right now to your computers and check out the happenings at GameCritics.com. So for all of us, it was a great first episode, an absolute pleasure. I look forward to doing it again next week. Any final words, Chi, Brad, or Mike?
No, just like you said, it's always a pleasure, Tim, and we hope everybody tunes in next week to hear what we got to say.
Yeah, we promise to get better.
Yep, I second that.
Fantastic. Well, from all of us, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next week.